The BLM manages 517 wilderness study areas, also known as WSAs, containing about 12.6 million acres in the western states and Alaska. WSAs are places that have wilderness characteristics. In other words, we look at their size, their naturalness, and whether they have outstanding opportunities for solitude or primitive recreation. The BLM in Oregon, Washington manages 130 different national conservation lands and 88 wilderness study areas. These wilderness study areas are primarily located in southeast Oregon in the Prineville, Lakeview, Burns, and Vail District. And these 88 areas comprise over 2.6 million acres. Nope. As early as 1926, advocates of wilderness preservation had acknowledged the beauty and important ecological values of desert lands under the BLM's administration as candidates for wilderness protection. In 1976, Congress directed the BLM to evaluate all of its land for the presence of wilderness characteristics and identified these areas as WSAs. Until Congress makes a decision to add a WSA to the wilderness system, we manage them so they might someday be considered for wilderness. The Federal Land Policy and Management Act provides direction to the BLM on the management of these WSAs and states that we're to manage these areas as to not impair the suitability of these areas for preservation as wilderness. The original wilderness review process outlined under the Federal Land Policy and Management Act had 3 phases: inventory, study, and reporting to Congress. The wilderness inventory was conducted from 1978 to 1980. The original inventory focused on roadless areas of public lands of 5,000 acres or more, but also included areas of less than 5,000 acres that had wilderness characteristics in association with other federal agencies like the U.S. Forest Service. The inventory phase identified areas that were found to have had wilderness characteristics that were unaffected by the human imprint, where there was opportunities for solitude and primitive and unconfined types of recreation, where the area was at least 5,000 acres, and we also looked at whether or not the area contained ecological, geological, scientific, educational, scenic, or other historic values. When these characteristics were found within a defined boundary, the presence of a potential wilderness was documented and the area was then classified as a wilderness study area. In Oregon, Washington, the Wilderness Study Report was completed in October 1991. The BLM reviews all proposals for uses and facilities within WSAs to figure out whether the development or activity would harm the area and make it unavailable for wilderness status. We figure out whether the use or the facility is temporary, whether the use or the facility would create a new surface disturbance. Certain activities are allowed in these areas, such as recreational hiking, use of pack stock, or domestic livestock grazing. These are all recognized as acceptable within a WSA, although in a literal sense, they can cause surface disturbance. In many cases, fire is a natural part of the landscape. In these situations, the BLM works to restore fire to its natural role. Natural and prescribed fires may be allowed to burn under certain conditions. In all cases, the equipment and tactics used to manage fires is designed to minimize the impact to wilderness values. The response to a fire can change over the course of the event due to variations in weather, topography, fuels, and resources available. Managers use a decision support process to guide and document wildfire management decisions. In the end, we use this minimum impact suppression tactics or light hand on the land suppression techniques wherever possible, while providing for the safety of firefighters and the public in meeting the wildfire management objectives. There are a number of different situations where we'll consider making exceptions to the activities or proposals within a wilderness study area. These include emergencies, public safety, valid and existing rights, and grandfathered uses. In emergencies, any action necessary to prevent loss of life or property may be taken, even if the action will impair wilderness suitability. Emergencies include things like fire, flood, pursuit of criminal suspects, search and rescue operation, and recovery of deceased persons. In addition to emergencies, we can take actions like remediation of human-caused hazards in the area, for example, mine entrances and abandoned mines. Grazing, mining, mineral leasing uses, and facilities that were allowed at the date of the approval of the Federal Land Policy and Management Act are also grandfathered as pre-existing uses. Grandfathered uses only include grazing, mining, and mineral leases and do not include other uses such as recreational activities. Grandfathered uses may be acquired by a new operator, but they cannot be transferred to a different location. Most recreational activities, including hiking, horseback riding, fishing, hunting, and trapping, camping, and other primitive forms of recreation, are allowed in wilderness study areas. Some uses may be prohibited or restricted if they require permanent structures or depend on cross-country use of motor vehicles or mechanical transport. Examples include things like pickup vehicles for hot air balloons or even sailplanes. Or an area may become more frequently used for camping, thereby causing broad physical impacts to soils or vegetation. Or an area may become popular for mountain biking, and the resulting increase in use results in a loss of solitude. In either case, we look at the impact to these wilderness characteristics. Livestock management developments that were existing when FLPMA was passed in 1976 may continue to be used and maintained in the same manner and to the same degree. In other words, they can have the same but no more physical or visual impacts as they did at that time. New livestock management developments may only be approved if they don't impair the wilderness characteristics in the area. Specifically, we look at whether or not the development will be unnoticeable and whether or not it requires new motorized access. Currently, there's no specific policy on the use of drones in wilderness study areas. That said, drone use can disturb an area's outstanding solitude and primitive recreation setting. It can also hinder recreation opportunities for others in the area. Thanks for taking the time to learn a little bit more about wilderness study areas, and we hope that you get out and visit the 88 exceptional wilderness study areas spread throughout Southeast Oregon.